What's up, guys? It's your Popboy. Before we get started real quick, I got some great news for you. So Popboy Studios, aka my loft, has received an upgrade. Alright, I got some new equipment, some better equipment. You guys would probably laugh your asses off if you saw like some of the stuff I've had to work with in the past, but yeah, man, now it should take me like a normal amount of time to, make a freaking video. Which, like, I'm thinking, like, oh my god, like, now, maybe does this mean I can have, like, a real channel with, like, regular uploads? Like, holy crap, man, I hope so, because I got a lot I can fire off, so stay tuned for that. But right now, let's get to this. We got a freaking mess to clean up. This whole thing with the freelances, the series, the coach stuff, the offensive settings, I don't know why it's so messed up this year. I don't know, like, what changed. Like, it used to be just fine. It used to work great. Yeah, man. And then, to make matters even worse, you gotta help me out here. I don't know what this is. Like, this like, random lollygagging. I don't think I've ever said lollygagging, but that's what this is. Like, okay, man, like, we called the play already, like, move, go, what are you doing? Like, there's a thing called a shot clock, hello? So, I don't know, man, that just makes what we're doing here, it makes this video even more necessary, makes me even more glad that I've put the time into it to get it all straightened out and tested, so you'll see, our systems will help with the time issue. They're going to help us get a good mixture of actions and do it naturally and efficiently. And also straighten out, like, there's so many different settings, right? Like, what is all, do we really need all this 2K? Like, what is the game actually, like, what overrides what? Like, what is the game actually listening to? How much influence does each one of these things have? Nobody knows. Well, I guess I know now, so I'll share that with you, and we'll get into, like, what can we trust the game to run, right? Oh, and also, like, why is it so different in each gen? We'll get into all that in this one video, so I hope it doesn't end up being too long, but stick with me here, because I swear it all makes sense in the end, or at least I hope so. Let's get into the easy stuff first. So the coach settings, the adaptive coaching engine, I turn it off for defense because we know that it interferes with our custom defensive settings. But it's fine on offense, because we can override it easily with, all the stuff that we're going to do on offense, and it doesn't really, like, interfere with anything. So I do offense only for that. And that's on both gens. I'm on next gen right now. That's what I'm going to start with. But don't worry if you're on current gen. We'll get into everything that's different there. All right, so moving on this list, we want to make sure we have all the play vision stuff on, like, all plays and full and show all. Right, of course, we want to be able to see everything it's trying to run. So we got that. Now, of course, offensive play calling, we want to have that on manual because we always want to be able to override, what the coach is calling by calling our own play. So that's good if we want to run something else. Now, ideally, we can get the coach to, like, run some decent stuff so we don't have to do that, on every single possession because it gets time consuming and it gets tedious and it's annoying. But, oh, down here, I almost forgot about these. So the freelance settings down here at the bottom, you'll see why later, but on next gen, these are irrelevant. Okay, but they are actually important for current gen. So on current gen, we want to make sure we use dynamic. That's the really important one. Now, the do not repeat I use, that's kind of preference, but I recommend that as well. We'll get more into these two in a minute. All right, so still on next gen. Let's come into the offensive settings. I don't know, man. I used to just, select my 4 favorite freelances, and you use those coach settings we just saw to decide, how you want the coach to cycle through all the different actions in your freelances. And it was fine, but this year it doesn't cycle through shit. It doesn't mix up anything with these freelances, and that's no matter what you do. You can turn ace on or off. It doesn't matter, no matter what your settings are. So I don't know. So let's not dwell on that. Let's now turn the page. Let's get to what can we do? What do we want to do? What do we know? Well, one thing I can tell you is that in 2K23, this series thing that's at the bottom here on Next Gen, that overrides everything. So if you take it off auto and put it on something, that's going to override literally everything else you do. So if we can't trust the coach to mix up, to give us a decent mixture in our freelances, then, what we can do is we can set this to something here, and we can know that we can trust that the game's going to call it well, and it's going to do a good job of mixing up all the actions in that series. Okay, and by the way, running one of these series right here, that's basically the same thing as running a freelance offense, right? Like, the 43 is the 43, for example. Like, it's the exact same actions. Okay, but two ways that the series is better than the freelance. Number one, we already talked about it. It actually does a good job of mixing it up. It actually runs it correctly when it's the series. But number two, and this is huge, right? Because of what we've already talked about. With the series, the play gets called earlier. It's already got the spot on the floor, and your teammates are already getting set up as you're bringing the ball up the floor. So you spend a lot less time waiting for them to rearrange once you get up to the front court. Amazing. So another thing we can do with this series here is we can select favorite plays. Okay, and when you do that, it's going to do a good job of cycling through the plays that you put on your favorite playlist. Okay, and by the way, one thing with that, the backup plays are broken this year. It never runs them no matter who's on the floor, so you don't have to set those to anything. Just focus on your favorite plays for your starters. All right, now, you might be wondering, okay, so what about the freelances? Should we even set those? What about the freelance under the offensive set in the timeout menu? Do we even need to set that? And the answer on Next Gen is no. I don't even mess with it, because all the other stuff that we're doing here, the stuff that actually works, that's going to override the freelances anyway. All right, now, one important thing to always keep in mind with 2K, and this is why I said that there's too many different settings. Like, you go to one menu and set your offensive settings to something, but then you go to a different menu and set it to something else. Like, what is the game supposed to do? They don't know. It's like competing settings. So I seriously don't think 2K thought that through. But anyway, so with 2K, there is always an element of whatever you set last, like whatever setting you last touch, like that's what the game's gonna listen to, like right then and there, and for like a undetermined period of time. I don't know. So I'm not really worried about that. I'm worried about what's gonna work always consistently. So you can come in here, you can call a timeout and set this to something if you want, and it will start to run it. But don't be fooled. It's the same unmixed up stuff, just like we had with the freelances. This is basically just a different way to set your freelance. That's all it is. So it's just like totally unnecessary, but it's the same problems. We don't need it. I just leave it on default. We're good. We just use the stuff that we've already been through, the stuff we're about to go through, the stuff that works reliably, that the game will actually mix up and run right. And we don't need to call a timeout anyway. We can always just pause the damn game and come in here and change our series to something else anytime we want to switch things up. That's no problem. So let's get to the next thing. So we can also use one of these auto game plans at the top here as like a separate system. Okay, because you'll notice if you select one of these, it'll change all this stuff down here back to auto, which is, it's an auto game plan, so that's normal, that's fine, you don't need to worry about that. But we got 3 of these that are very useful in my opinion. Okay, number 1, my favorite one is set offense. I really love using that. That'll have the coach call one play from your playbook each possession. Okay, and it doesn't get repetitive. He does a good job of mixing them up. So if you put time into making a custom playbook, you know your plays, you know how to run them, you can recognize them when they're called, then this is great. Okay, and the other 2 that work, they're great too, very similar. So it's the play through, like play through your star, play through your secondary option. So same concept as a set offense, calling plays from your playbook, one each trip down. It's just going to call the play for that certain player to be the primary option. That's the only difference. But still mixed up, still everything good. All right, now, the other options up here, unfortunately, did not pass my testing. We don't need to spend a ton of time on them. It's not worth it. The main problem is they all result in offense that's very, very repetitive. Again, it's just not mixing up crap. All right, but hey, you know, at least 3 of these came out good on the testing. I was happy about that. And again, with those 3, your teammates are getting set up earlier, similar to what we saw before. So that's another big plus, and we all know why from earlier in the video. Okay, now what about the current gen people? What's different on current gen? Well, let me give you the good news first. Okay, so in current gen, as long as you have your freelance setting from before on dynamic, then the game actually does do a good job on there of mixing up the different actions in your 4 freelances that you can select. I don't know why it does it on current gen but not on next gen, but I guess for current gen, that's great. And now, like I said earlier, I would recommend putting it on do not repeat just because, you know, the game's just has struggled so much this year with mixing things up that I like to do anything I can to encourage mixing up the actions. Another thing too I'd recommend for this on current gen with your freelances, you want to try to move the ball to different points on the floor, right? And maybe give it to different people, like to start the possession, do it early in the possession. That's also going to help the game mix up your freelance actions even more. Guys, that's the good news for current gen. Let's get to the bad news. So in current gen, there's a lot of stuff that's not in the offensive settings, and instead it's in the timeout menu. Okay, so like the series, the sets, game plan stuff, like play through him, focus on this or that, all that stuff. I would not even touch any of this stuff in current gen. Okay, unfortunately. So there's 2 problems with this stuff. So number 1, a lot of times it makes your offense very, very repetitive when you try to use it, okay? And then also problem number 2, like let's say you did try to use this and you set it to something. A lot of times the game's just gonna randomly change it for no reason. It'll change it to something random at a random time. No matter what you do, you can turn ace on or off, it doesn't matter, no matter what your settings are. And then there's no rhyme or reason to it. So the only system I'd recommend here, like pretty much what I used to do. So you go in and you select your 4 favorite freelances, okay, and you put your settings on for the coach settings, dynamic and do not repeat. And then you're also going to want to select your favorite plays on your favorite playlist. Then you just let it run your freelance offenses, let it mix it up, and then you can call one of your favorite plays quickly and easily to override it whenever you want to. Alright guys, do we think that's maybe quite enough? I mean, holy crap, 2K, like, do you see what we have to do? Like, just to make your game, like, just to get it to make sense? Wow, man. I'm gonna go, I don't know, stare at a wall for a little while or something like that, but I'll be back on here with you guys soon. I'm so happy to be able to connect with y'all even more. It's great, man. So just pop that like button for me. I appreciate you guys. If you enjoy, if you found this useful, or maybe I just confused the hell out of you and you hate it, I'm sorry if that happened, but either way, if you subscribe if you haven't yet, hit the bell, turn your notifications on, of course. I hope y'all are doing well. I hope to see you right back here next time on 2K with the Pipe Boy.